So
Okay.
so you're like a seminal influence here for a lot of these businesses because you've been here long enough to see this complete
Well,
trajectory.
we take total credit for the revival of Webster Street.
You might as well.
Because literally, when we bought the building next door 24 and a half years ago, it was a ghost town down here.
It was, right?
You know, Walker Brothers was here. I think there was a bar where Martinsville Soap Works is now. The Riv was here, but all the Riv was doing was some organ concerts now and then that
Yeah,
had
it was nothing, right?
30, 40 people at them. And where Webster's Bistro is now was a 24-hour restaurant, and there just was not a lot down here. A lot of vacant buildings, or people would come and go. You know, they'd come in, they'd open up, they'd be open for a while,
And then close.
go close. And you know, I think when we first rented the space next door with the option to buy, and we exercised our option within 6 months
You
of
did.
being there, because for us, we didn't need street presence. We weren't looking for walk-in traffic,
That's
because
totally
when we
different model.
started, all we started with was teaching classes, drawing and painting classes. So we weren't looking for people to wander in off the street. So the most important factor for us was I don't want to say inexpensiveness.
Sure, it was
real estate.
It's a typical art ideology. Like, I need
course it is.
space.
Yeah, I need
Where's the
space.
space? And then can it be accessible?
Right.
And you had all three of those things
Right,
here.
and I mean, when we first bought that building, they were growing feeder fish in the basement, and on the first floor there were
What?
literally swimming pools in the basement.
Who was doing that?
I don't know. I can't even remember
That's
their name.
funny because all the crazy businesses you could
Right.
have.
So they were literally growing fish
feeder
to
fish
feed
business.
other fish.
Oh, that's funny.
And after they vacated and we bought the building, we had to literally tear the floors up on the first floor
Sure,
because they were just
trashed.
saturated with
Oh my gosh.
fishy water
Down to the beams, right?
down to the beams. So, you know, that was that. So we did a ton of work over there, but we did it all ourselves. I'd come home from work at night and go build walls and
You
put them
did.
up and drywall and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And we had Glenna's nephew pulled up the floors, and at one point, all of a sudden, he's doing something and he disappeared because there's a spot over there, because that used to be the news building.
Okay.
And the presses used to be in the basement, which
Okay.
is why that building sits up off the street so far.
I see.
They had this big trench in there, and the presses were down there, and
They had
so
to
there's
sit.
like 10-foot ceilings in the basement.
Right.
Well, there was a hole where they used to dump the lead type to be remelted down in the basement.
Oh my gosh.
So he kind of went through that. Fortunately,
Wait, he fell?
yeah, the floor collapsed. And he
my
was kind of a
God.
bodybuilder.
He was okay.
So he put his arms out like this and kind of caught himself.
Oh my God.
It was never dull.
It's like the Money Pit, the movie. You bought the building and you're like, what did we do? Right.
After we bought it, Glenda's grandson, who was probably, 9 at the time, had come over and he saw it and he said, "Grandma, did you look at this place before you bought it?"
Like, I needed space. So what do you want? Right.
And it really was the perfect space. It was affordable and doable, and it got us started on what we wanted to do.
Sure.
And people hauled all their art supplies up those horrible tall steps over there.
Wow.
and
What year was this? This is 20 years.
1995.
Wow.
No. Yes.
So
Yes,
those back
next
stairs
year's-
up to the pencil
Well, there's
studio.
two sets. Yeah, there's front
the front stairs too,
and there's
right?
back stairs.
So everybody would haul up their gear.
Yeah.
You'd have your classes up there.
We'd have the classes
The
upstairs.
downstairs was just like
The downstairs we were redoing.
Working on for-
We were redoing. So we were working on the downstairs while we were teaching
Having
the
classes.
upstairs. And we started with 2 classes. One had 1 student in it, and the other one had 2 students in it. And it's over those 25 years, we've added parts to it. And I
Right.
think one of the reasons that we're still here after 25 years even though we're still not making any money because we're artists. But
Right.
one of the reasons we're still here is because we do so many different things.
Yes.
You know, we have 2 teaching studios now where I teach and other people teach. We have the frame shop that Mary runs. You know, she's a wizard. She's just brilliant when it comes to this stuff. And we have the art supply store, and we don't try to supply art supplies to the world. We stock the things that people that come here for classes
Which is
need.
perfect.
Because they don't want to drive all the way out anywhere else to have
Sure.
to go get art supplies. I mean, our art supply store started in 2 little dresser things that came out of Glenna's house. And, you know, we'd have a few tubes of paint and
Same
some
premise.
charcoal. Yeah.
Whatever you
same
needed,
premise,
we had
right.
it here
Yeah.
for the classes we're
Right.
teaching.
And then they didn't want to go all the way out to Williamsville to get their work framed when they were done. So all of the things that happened for a logical reason.
Sure.
So they all started with the classes, and then the classes needed art supplies, and then
Right.
the classes needed to have their paintings and drawings framed when they were done. So one thing grew out of another thing and out of another. So, you know, it's
Awesome.
very diversified, and if one part of the economy is struggling, we are always, you know, classes have supported the real estate from day one.
Right.
So if things are tough in the framing world, we still have students that have to have their work
Sure.
framed. In addition to our building, when we still owned that building.
You did.
Yes.
So you were renting that.
Yes.
And this.
because
You had to
we found out real quickly that we weren't going to be able to sustain people hauling all of that stuff upstairs
Sure.
for long. Probably it was an insurance nightmare, which I never really thought about, but
Right.
killed me. It was tough.
Well, that's a
It's a very tall building.
That's a rickety.
And so we actually rented that space and turned that into the studios. And then, so we had a gallery over in that building, on the
Right.
first floor. Our offices and our studios were in the back. We rented that. And then this space became available. These were 2 completely different businesses.
Separate walls.
Separate walls. There was a wall there, and this space became available. We rented this space and found out when we rented it that when I opened that wall up, that it had been opened prior.
Oh, was
So
that already there?
It was all
like the framing.
Yes,
of that?
the frame was there. And
That was lucky.
They just had
You could just
installed. Yep.
Knock them out.
In fact, I think they're still in the basement. If I
Oh,
have
that's
to
funny.
put them back.
That's all you had to do.
Yeah.
That's funny because you're anticipating this huge structural
Yep.
rehab, and you
Yep.
didn't have to do any of
Yep.
that. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, it's meant to be.
Yeah, it was.
Right.
And then once we were here, we actually asked him if he was interested in selling this building, and Julie's Shoes was over where the 2 studios are now.
Okay.
So anyway, we asked, and they said no, they're not ready to do anything yet. So
Right.
we retrofitted all this stuff. We rented where the computer place is across the street.
You did.
Moved our gallery over there, and so we, you know, kind of did this big retrofit, and then 6 months later he said, "Do you want to buy the building?" So I was like, "Yeah, we do."
I guess, yeah.
And now we got to do this all over again. But you know, it was a good move. So,
Right.
and our friend Lisa, who owns
Yeah.
Pencil in the River, was.
So you were friends with her before she knew
Yes,
that
she was
building?
renting over there.
Oh, she was already in
She
there.
rented the upstairs
Gotcha.
when we moved downstairs.
Oh, so I didn't. So when Lisa and I talked about this for the show, I didn't realize that she didn't have. I thought it was all like kind of together. That Pencil was first.
No.
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 So it was second. So the gallery was first, or what did she do there? Did she just do her photography?
She just had her photography.
I see,
Yes,
okay.
none of the downstairs was all us. She was upstairs.
Gotcha.
And then when this became available, we talked to him and we asked her if she was interested in buying the building, and she was. So she bought that building. We bought this building, and it was, you know, it was quite a lovely building. There was vertical plastic siding on the top. And none
Good.
of these transom windows were exposed. None of that brick up there was exposed. There were about 6 layers of paint on those brick
Oh my
columns.
gosh.
And once we started doing the rehab, we found out why there was siding up there, because one whole storefront section of brick was missing.
Okay.
And I think
So-
we finally found matching brick in Tennessee or something.
How long after that did you? I mean, did you hunt that down right away to get it done? or-
Contractor did.
You did. Okay.
Contractor did.
I mean, because your building's beautiful and it set the tone for the street. I think,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, it did. And you know what we found that is, like after we moved in, even before we were over here permanently, friends who had a business over on Oliver Street, the Hodgepodge, rented a space down at the other end of the street, which is now a hairdresser,
Okay.
down next to the liquor store.
Okay.
And they're artists, both of them. So, you know, we kind of hung and they came to classes
Sure.
and things. Then they bought the buildings across the street where
Oh, so
the
we're
brewery
Right.
is. So they had Hodgepodge and they had a cafe over there.
Okay.
And then when we rented the gallery, they actually opened the gallery building. Those were two separate buildings. They actually opened up the buildings to each other.
Oh wow, they did the same thing you did. in a way.
And so they actually, we didn't have to be physically in our gallery during the day.
Oh, they'd
if
take-
somebody wanted to buy something, they would go next door and our friends from Hodgepodge would come over into our space and ring it up in our register.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was
really
just-
helped.
and it was. And when we had receptions for openings,
You would
because we
do
had a new opening, we would do it. They would do the food.
Right.
And people would spread out from our space to their space. They did good business on opening nights. 'Cause
Sure.
people would go over and look at their stuff and buy things. And
Wow.
so it was just a perfect synergy and a great relationship. It was.
That's the type of synchronicity that I always say. And one of my favorite quotes is Joseph Campbell says, "Universal open. When you find your path, the universal open doors where there was once only walls," and both figuratively and literally, right? Because you needed that to happen at that
Yeah,
point, and
yeah.
it just fell into place for you.
It did. So all of those things were just slowly, but so after they did that, same thing. They bought the building. So you have a whole different attitude when you own
Sure.
the real estate and you're running a business than when you're renting
Yep.
on a month-to-month basis. On a month-to-month basis, if you're running a business, if things aren't going well, you just
Pack
roll up
up
the
and-
carpets
right.
and off you go. So more and more people came down and actually bought the real estate, opened businesses, and it was just, a growing process.
So
Meanwhile, all of that reconstruction down at the canal had happened.
So that's what I was just going to ask you. So that was in tandem with this whole period. For
Yeah,
you.
that started, I know when we were first looking at our building 25 years ago, there were rumbles about them doing some big redevelopment
Right.
down at the canal.
It's such a huge, for Buffalo at that time period, that was pretty prescient for, right? I mean, it was,
It's kind of like all of that time, everything is, how everything that would happen down in Buffalo. It's
Sure.
like, well, we need to do this and we need to do that, and they talk it to death, and
It
we need
never
to build a new
happened.
bridge, and they talk it to death. And
Yeah.
meanwhile, back here, it's like we've got this great physical asset right here. Let's take advantage of it. So they redeveloped that whole canal area. They put in the docks. They, closed Sweeney Street,
Yep.
bricked it out. So that's become an event space.
Sure.
They have concerts there, Yep.
you can't beat it. It's
And,
one of those.
in a lot of ways, we're lucky because even though I think in the growing pains years of Webster Street, of
Right.
downtown, nobody ever came through and raised the buildings. Part
Right.
of that happened across the bridge in Tonawanda.
Yeah.
Urban renewal, and they took down the Palace Theater and
It's sad.
the Star Theater, and I don't.
that didn't happen here.
And no. So where McDonald's and the bank and stuff
Yeah, that
are
whole-
now, those used to be these kinds of buildings. And, that makes a huge difference because you have something to
Hang your hat on.
You still have bones
Yeah.
to work with.
And that's all you need.
Yeah.
That's all you need. And I saw this when I was out in California. And New England, of course, has already seen this type of thing for the most part. But you just need those bones.
Yep.
As long as you got
And
the foundation. So now, this was back a while ago, though. So this is a good 15 years ago when we're talking about now, right? All this renovation. This is back in the later part of the 90s.
Yeah, it's, you know what, it's something that's been a gradual build over the past 25
Right.
years. So it's just, it's kind of like you can almost peel back the layers of
Right.
of things. And, when you talk about, oh, gee, Webster Street looks great, it does. But that's a good 20 years of planning and developing and thinking.
Sure.
And the Lumber City Development Corporation has been wonderful in helping with the development of Webster Street. They're now trying to do some of the same things over on Oliver Street. But they're a very strong group, and I give the City of North Tonawanda a lot of credit because when they formed the Lumber City Development Corporation, they created funding for it that would be ongoing.
I mean,
Exactly.
you've built this awesome business that's really now a cornerstone of this entire street.
Right, and not only the street, but the art community in general in Western New York.
Right.
So, there are things that are happening here that we want to see continue. So that's my probably next goal in
Just to
my business
get
world
somebody to
is to start
hire a manager.
find somebody
Yeah.
that's going to
Groom
carry on the torch.
Yeah, because you have to. You really do. And you know that. And it's no different than any other awesome business.
Yeah.
It matters. And it matters to everybody that comes in here. And it matters to...
You can't do that overnight, so you have to
No.
plan for that. And
Yeah. And that's the thing with the legacy businesses.
the studio space is like the culmination of everything that we had been doing. When we started upstairs, we had sheets hanging down the middle of the room to keep the lights from one side shining onto the still lifes from the other side, and those little clip-on lamps that you buy
Sure,
at value.
clamp lights,
to-
yeah, for $5.
Yeah, and like these little wooden bookshelves to put all the stuff on, and the floors kind of did this, and so we went from that to getting a little bit more high tech when we moved downstairs, and we actually had a carpenter come in and
Build an actual...
spaces for each artist. They could have their own space, and it would be a little more controlled.
Right.
Although the light was still a little crazy. And when we built those, after they went in there and gutted the place, the tin ceilings are the existing. I mean, they're gorgeous. They were in fabulous condition.
Which is great, because they didn't tear them. They
just needed to be primed and painted.
And you're good.
And so we've got these big, tall ceilings, and now we've got all of these perfect lights that
Yeah, it's a
do
beautiful,
everything. Yeah.
beautiful
So
space.
if I probably tried to do that from the get-go, I wouldn't have been able to accomplish it. It was doing it with the clip-on lights
Yes.
and the sheets and all of those other things that showed me the kinds of things that I needed to do when I actually could do it.
Well, and I think, when I did the thing with Lisa and I came back and I did those classes, I was showing them for the show and filming them. It was just awesome to see the camaraderie and the feel there. Totally different than I thought it was going to be,
And it's interesting because I have 4 classes. One of them is a specialty class. So I have like 3 regular classes on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday morning. Every single one of them has a different personality. So
And they're like, it's like a person, I mean, right?
is.
The culmination of these personalities.
Thursday's my bad girls class. They like to drink wine in the morning.
So they get a little loose, right?
And it's like if somebody wants to join that class, they have
You have to fit into that,
They have to interview them, see if they're going to fit in.
Well, it's like a club,
It is.
really, right? It's like a like-minded.
Yeah. It is because the part of I think a viable working class
Right.
is not. It's not just what they're getting from me. It's what they're getting from each other.
Yeah.
And being able to share ideas and
Sure.
concepts and techniques and things like that. So, because I don't try to mold everybody to be a mini-me, I want everybody to be themselves as an artist. So people are going to have different styles and different approaches
Right.
and things like that. So they get to experience all those different kinds of things just based on the group that is in the class.
Well, you give them the tools.
I give them the tools.
And then they kind of fill in the gaps. And it's their personality you're trying to really accentuate here,
Yeah.
right? It's
Yeah.
to make them shine
Yeah.
and to figure
Eventually, I
out.
want them to realize that painting isn't about copying what's in front of you. It's about creating what's inside you
Yes.
and bringing that to whatever you're painting. It doesn't matter what you're painting. You could be painting a vase, a
Sure.
still life. You can still bring things to that express who you are
Sure.
and what you're all about. So.
But great wisdom and well learned wisdom and deserved. And it was just like saying when you're doing the classes and you're hanging the little clip lights, this is the same type of premise. In other words, there's no easy path to, and you have to find yourself. And whatever that is, whatever that may be, if you can get to that pure point, it's going to be awesome.
Yep.
And I think,
And I always tell people, so if you really, really, really want to hone your craft, teach. Because
explain, right? Articulate, right?
Right. You have to be able to. You have to be able to handle problems on a constant basis.
Right.
And people say, "Well, you make that look so easy." I think I do this 3 days a week for
That's your
3
life,
hours,
yeah.
and every day. I'm not just sitting and painting a whole painting. I'm helping each person get over a hurdle that they need to get over.
Sure.
Or solve a problem that they can't figure out how to solve. And every time I'm doing that, it's adding to my
Yeah, you're
knowledge
learning
base and
as
my
you go.
learning.
Sure. Yeah, and that's what I love about these legacy businesses. There's so much wealth and knowledge in these places that that has to be saved. You know, like your personal knowledge that you've gained through decades of painting and decades of running a business and decades of teaching and decades of being involved in the art community, that's huge. It needs to be shared, and that's what you do. You
Yes.
give that because you have to give that because you earned that, but it doesn't count unless you give it to somebody.
Right. I've always
Yeah.
said, like even in the teaching community, the education community, it's like when you get teachers who are in their last 2 years before they retire, they shouldn't be in the classroom anymore.
I
They
agree.
should be working with new teachers, helping them get to where they need to go.
Right.
And, because you reach a point right before you retire after 30 years of teaching where it's like, please just let this be over.
Yeah.
But they're teachers, so they all want to impart that knowledge. And you get these new teachers that are, it's like, what do I do next?
They get freaked out and scared and they
Really,
run.
I don't know why they're not putting them together.
You know what? I
taking
never.
Advantage.
I don't. Who knows? Because I'm not a teacher, but I was dating a teacher for a couple of years. I don't think there's a mentorship program. There should be.
Of course.
You know what? There should be in life. This is like, the trades, even for you. Like
Trade
that should be. There,
programs.
yeah, there should be a place where you're like, I have this beautiful business.
Well, that's how artists. That's how art used to be.
Right.
Back in the Renaissance and things. It's like I tell my students all the time. I said I need one of my apprentices to clean my brushes. Come in and grind my paints. Back
That's the
then.
Miyagi thing, man.
Then so that's what they did. And then the master artists would teach them how to paint.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, you grind my paints and clean my brushes. I'll teach you how to paint.
And
that's
yeah.
how you learned your craft.
Yep, and the 50 I remember I'm myself an old audio engineer, and I was struggling with something for a long time, and I had a technical problem that one of the big guys spent like a ton of money on this gear, and I couldn't solve it, and it was an electrical issue, so they sent in an electrical tech. He was en route to Cleveland from New York City, and it was really nice of them. They comped him a night here, so he comes over to my studio, and in the process of fixing my grounding problem on one of the machines, he taught me how to do what's called ducking, which is how when audio comes into a segment, a voice, it'll naturally drop everything, but in such a beautiful way you don't notice it. I had never done that before. I didn't even know what it was. And because he had been doing this for 30, 40 years, and then he realized he was a great electrical tech, so he did that, but he had this great audio engineering skill set. It's that type of thing. Like that took him years to learn. He showed me how to connect certain pieces of gear to do this and do it the way that they do it in the big studios.
That moved you to a completely
2
different
seconds.
place.
Yeah, and it changed a lot for a long time.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing. Like you can show somebody a technique, whether it's in business or teaching teaching or being an artist, something that can take them years to learn, and then they can absorb that and integrate that into their...
And it's amazing how hard it is. The advantage that we have over the big box stores and places like that is, if you, we're a one-stop shop. I mean, people come in here and present us with the most unusual problems, especially in the frame shop.
Do they come to you with that because of the nature of the shop?
I don't know if they. Sometimes they come because they've heard of us through word of mouth. Sometimes they come because we're local. Sometimes they come because they know somebody. But people have very unique things that they want to memorialize.
Right.
And we did a job today where we framed a license plate from somebody's grandma. And a picture of her granddaughter standing in front of the car with grandma's license plate on it.
That's kind of cool.
It was very cool.
But that's different.
It's very different. People come and we have to solve problems. And it's not just framing it, it's finding a way to do it in a way that's going to meet somebody's lifestyle and budget. That's always a big issue. And everybody that's here is an artist. You don't have to worry about going into a store where you're dealing with somebody who's never dealt with these kind of things before. So, we know how to handle artwork. We know how to handle anything. And
so everybody understands, like, the premise, the process, the choices.
Yes.
Right.
And we're reasonable.
Yeah.
The frame should
it's
basically disappear.
Yeah.
The whole purpose of the framing package is to make whatever it is you're framing look spectacular. Most of the time, it's not just to throw something up on their wall.
Yeah, it
It's
matters to
meaningful,
you. Right.
People are framing things that are meaningful to them and to their lives.
Sure.
That are going to be part of their lives for many, 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 many years to come, and sometimes many generations.
To keepsake. Yeah.
So, how it's treated and how it's handled is really important.
And the classes that you guys offer, now, are you full up on a lot of those, or no?
We are pretty close to capacity. My classes ebb and flow. It's like I'm getting to the point where, like, now when I start getting into November, I'm going to lose some people to Florida for the winter.
But they always come back.
They always come back.
Yeah.
And, sometimes they send me pictures during the winter and say, I'm working on this painting, what should I do? We do a little long distance teaching.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. I didn't think about that. Sure. They need your advice still. They're down in Florida, but they still need your...
because they all go down there and say, I can't find anybody where they have a decent class. When I retire, I may retire from all of this. I'll never retire from teaching.
Yeah.
Even if it's...
Good.
Yeah, that'll always be happening.
And that's important because...
I can see someday maybe selling the building and renting back the studio.